Hi, welcome to Sweet Statistics. I'm Nicole Alioto, and this week, let's talk about sampling. Now, I have a beautiful bowl full of ginger crinkles here. And while I'd love to say that we are going to sample all of these cookies, what we're really looking to do is take a sample from this population of cookies and find out their weights so that we can approximate what's the average cookie weight. This might sound like, well, why would I ever use that? Think about any time that you have to collect data from a large body of individuals or items, and you can't collect data from everyone. So you're taking a sample. Maybe it's in education, you're looking at a sample of assessment scores, and you're looking to determine what is the average for the entire population of test takers. Perhaps you are in quality assurance in the baking or some other kind of retail industry, and you take a sample of product to see if it's meeting quality control standards before shipping. There are lots of applications that we can discuss. So we'll use this example. Now with sampling, we're going to talk about a few of the basic sampling techniques. We'll talk about random sampling, we'll talk about systematic sampling, and we'll talk about cluster sampling. If we were to weigh each cookie that is in this bowl, that would be taking a census. So just as you think about the census where folks go door to door and collect data from every individual in the country, we could do that. It's time consuming, it's labor intensive, and oftentimes we don't have the resources or the access to every single member of the population. So let's just say we can't take a census and weigh all of these cookies. Maybe we don't have time. So we're going to work on taking a sample. The first sample we take is a random sample. So a random sample means that any cookie in this population could be selected at random, and there's random sampling with and without replacement. Now, random sampling, I'm going to use a die here and just roll and say, okay, we got a 4. So I'm going to take the 4th cookie. We're not going to eat all of these. I'll just move these out of the way. 1, 2, 3. We're going to take cookie number 4. And we are going to weigh this cookie on my little scale, and the weight is 8/10. Now, if I did it without replacement, I would put this one aside, I'd roll again, and I got a 6, so let me take the next 6th cookie, etc. Now, if I did random sampling with replacement, I've got to put all of those cookies back in the bowl, and then my 6th would be out of the entire population. So the benefits of with replacement is that every cookie has a chance of being selected 1 out of, there are actually 52 cookies, so 1 in 52 chance of being selected. If I were to remove cookies out as part of my sample, then I'm down to 1 in 51 or 1 in 50 or 1 in 49. So they don't have as equal a chance of being selected. Let's take a sample of 5 cookies out of this population of 52 at random and see what our average weight is. Now that I've sampled 5, and here are my weights, my average cookie weight is 0.72. Now, is that representative of the total population? A random sample, it might be a good approximation based on the size of the population and the number of cases in your sample. Let's take a look at 2 other sampling techniques and see if we get some similar results. So for systematic sampling, or 1 in K, we have to determine what the K is, or what is the number of cookies that we will count and use for our sample. So if we have a 1 in 3 systematic sampling, then every 3rd cookie will be part of our sample until we reach that sample of 5. So to figure out what our K is, let's just roll our die here and see what we get. And we get a 5. So we'll take a 1 in 5 sample. So we'll count first 5, number 5 will be in our sample, 10, 15, 20, and 25, and we'll get our 5 cookies. Here we go. Here are the 5 weights from our systematic sampling approach. and the average. As we can see, the average is slightly higher than the average of the 5 we selected at random. Which one is more representative of the population? Now, it's important when you do systematic sampling that your array of cases or cookies or individuals is not organized in a way that, for example, every 5th, 10th, 15th, 20th, 25, if it's at the same location where they are ranked and ordered in a certain way, then we're getting that individual or that cookie based on the ordering or the ranking. So there isn't necessarily a random way of collecting those cookies or data. So we really want to make sure that when we are doing a 1K or a systematic sample, that we are extracting those cases or cookies in this example from an assortment that has not been ordered in any particular way in advance. Now let's do one more sampling technique, cluster sampling. Now cluster sampling, we will call each one of these piles of 5 cookies a cluster. A cluster sampling is useful if you happen to have, we talked about education data and you want to do an average, whether maybe it's student satisfaction survey or assessment results. And instead of taking a random selection across all classrooms, maybe you take a random selection of the classroom and then you assess every student within that classroom. Similarly, if you're looking at, again, we'll go back to customer satisfaction, maybe you have 40 restaurants and you want to assess customer satisfaction with those restaurants. So instead of taking a random sample or a stratified sample, we could take a sample of restaurants. So take a selection out of the 40 and then assess all of the patrons of the restaurant at that point in time. So let's take a look. We've got all of these stacks of cookies, and let's randomly select one of these sets. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got a couple stragglers here. So we don't have 10 options here. So let's take a look at a random number generator, and you can find a random number generator at the rear of many statistics books, or you can look online for a random number generator. So why don't you go ahead and take a look at a random number generator and pick your number, and I will do so here. Okay, I have my random number generator set here, and I have a range of 1 to 10, and I'm asking it to generate, and it picked number 1. So I'm just going to pick this group right here as my number 1 group. Let's weigh these 5 and see what we get. So here are the 5 that we found from these cookies, the 5 weights, and the average is 0.8. As we can see, our random sample of 0.72 average was slightly lower than our systematic sample of 0.8 and our cluster sample, which was also 0.8. The question is, which one is the most reflective of the average cookie weight? What's your guess as to what the average cookie weight was? You ready for the result? So when we take a look at all of these 52 and we weigh them individually, that would be the census, and we had a range of weights from 0.6 to 1. So that's a pretty narrow range. So I guess I didn't do such a bad job when it came to eyeballing how much dough was in each cookie. It was pretty small in its variation. So for these 52 cookies, the average weight was 0.78. So as you see, our systematic and our cluster samples were more accurate and closer to the average of 0.78 than our random sample. Hopefully you enjoyed our random sample, systematic sample, and cluster sample example with our ginger crinkles. And if you'd like to try your hand at baking these cookies and maybe doing your own sampling, the recipe can be found in the description below. Thanks for joining. Have a significant day.